Hello. This is about my sixth and final try at recording a few comments on World War I, Form 12. I feel like we're already up to World War III. I'm just going to give it one more time. I've even learned to write backwards in order to have the introduction here. So, we've talked about this, I guess, in snippets online, and we've done some reading. In thinking about World War I and Jewish history, it's important to begin with the premise that indeed it was very important. It's easy to be overshadowed by World War II being so catastrophic. Sometimes it's easy to miss the significance of World War I. Perhaps with the centennial of the war coming up in 1914, at least in Europe, and it's 2014, and then later here in the States in 2017, World War I will begin to get a little more attention. Looking at it broadly, World War I results in the breakup of several major empires, multinational states. You get the end of the Tsarist Empire, which is replaced by the Soviet Union, which remains multinational. But the end of the Tsarist monarchical is still significant. You have the breakup of the Habsburg Empire, which is extremely significant in that it was one of the great forces in European life for many centuries. You have the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, which is important in terms of Middle Eastern politics in general and Zionism in specific. You see the rise of the United States, or at least the United States playing its hand. The United States will retreat back into isolationism, but in terms of the world order, it becomes clear to everyone about how powerful the United States is going to be in the 20th century. You have a further strengthening of the American-British alliance, which I suppose we accept as a given today, but remember as late as 1812 the British were burning down the White House. France continues to try, like England, to maintain its empire, but this is a critical period in which colonialism also is going to be weakened, and then after World War II will no longer be viable at all, and there'll be many wars of independence from colonial powers. Looking at the Jewish situation geographically, let's move from east to west, beginning with Russia, which enters the war poorly prepared. Much of the war on the Eastern Front is fought in areas where there's a very dense Jewish population, bringing suffering to that population. Ironically, the Germans are not the bad guys in this, and even have as significant a book as Star of Redemption by Franz Rosenzweig will come out of his experiences as a German soldier on the Eastern Front. And I would say to some extent the interest in East European spirituality, Hasidism in particular, grows out of the contact of German Jewish soldiers with Jews in the shtetls of Western Russian Empire, of Central Poland, so that not only a Franz Rosenzweig but a Martin Buber and others become even more aware of the eastern end of Europe in terms of potential and models for Jewish spirituality, which will gain traction already in the 20s in Germany with the opening of the Lehrhaus in Frankfurt, and then very much, I would say, in the post-Woodstock era here in the United States, draws deeply from the East European experience because of the literal confrontation between the tens of thousands of German Jewish soldiers and the Russian army. There's even a remarkable Yiddish language story by Sholem Aleichem, the most known of the Yiddish writers, about what happens when a German Jewish officer and an East European Jewish soldier come face to face on the battlefield and make the decision not to try to kill one another. Of course, they're both executed later, but nevertheless, that's the irony of Sholem Aleichem and East European humor. The Russians withdraw from the war with the collapse of the Tsarist Empire. As a result, later, of course, you get the overthrow of the Tsar, and you get the Soviet Union, which will shut down Judaism per se in the Soviet Union. More on that in the weeks ahead. Officially anti-Semitic, but also anti-Judaism, and the whole thing will eventually fail under Stalin in the 30s and the 50s. But because of the violent anti-Semitism of the pro-Tsarist forces, the Jews are pretty much forced to the left, something that continues to this day. With the war over, Poland is reconstituted as an independent country, the Treaty of Versailles, and from 1919 on, it is restored to the map. It had completely disappeared after the partitions of the late 18th century. Poland is stuck between Germany and the Soviet Union, not a great place to be, and ultimately tips in the direction of the Germans, which of course is catastrophic for the Jewish population there, and the Polish Jews are the biggest losers, so to speak, in the story of the Nazi onslaught later. Moving west yet again, we see in Germany, as a result of the war, a general destabilization of German society. Immediately after the war, charges are made that Jews were shirkers. It's a major piece in what would become the Nazi war on the Jews, that Jews did not live up to their military responsibilities. Today, if you go to Germany, every German Jewish cemetery has at its entrance massive, proportionate, but massive monuments to their participation in the Weltkrieg, in the World War. So World War I, in terms of consequences, is fateful for the Jews of Germany. I think it's important to note, because of questions about Jewish resistance, that indeed a large percentage of German Jewish men are in the Kaiser's army. People today, given the current gun debate here in the United States, ask the question, what would have happened if the Jews of Germany had been better armed? It's an impossible question, because in fact they did have extensive military training and experience. It's not well known, but it is true. There was also a shift to pacifism after World War I because of the brutal slaughter. And in France, Jews are moving into France during this period. France, of course, exacts great vengeance upon the Germans. France is a very divided country with respect to its view of Jews. The left, in particular, embraces the Jews. Even a Jewish socialist, Leon Blum, becomes a prime minister of France beginning in 1936. The big winner in World War I is the UK. Its role as the dominant world power is confirmed for sure, and specifically for Jewish purposes, the UK now has control of the land of Israel in the terms of the Mandate, and it's obviously complicated, but there is the Balfour Declaration given during the war in 1917, perhaps given to influence Russian and American Jews to compel their respective governments to be in the war, to stay in the war, and also as an alternative to Jewish immigration to England. With the war over, there's a mandate and a Jewish governor, Herbert Samuels, of the mandate. So Zionism, so to speak, shifts. The whole Zionist movement at this point is going to shift as virtually an internal matter in the context of the worldwide British Empire. And finally, in the United States, first of all, it's important to note that you have a 250,000 Jewish men and women, mostly men, under arms during World War I. That, coupled with the fact that with the isolationism after the war and strong anti-Semitism here at home, America closes its doors, and the processes of Americanization speed up during this period. You had 250,000 men who served in the American Army, and you have no, quote, fresh blood coming in, so it's going to spur on Americanization here at home, and distance Jews from their places of origin. There was access to Poland, access to Russia. Being communist after the war was much more difficult. In addition to the geographical consequences of World War I, the creation of Poland and Czechoslovakia, and the breakup of the Habsburg Empire and the creation of different states there and the realignment within the Soviet Union, you also have the war impacting on ideas as well. And I would say one of the great casualties of World War I was the concept of progress. Progress was an incredibly important idea in this phase of the modern world, but because of the carnage of World War I, 30 million casualties, only to be exceeded by World War II with 75 million casualties, there was a slight dampening in the idea of progress. You still hear it trying to rally itself, but from the point of view of moral evolution, I think the war showed that people are as brutal as ever, and in fact, with religion slipping in popularity before World War I, this diminished view of human potential actually will help pave the way to a revival of traditional religions, which tend to take a much dimmer view of human nature. So after World War I, the map of the Jewish world has changed, and the context, the intellectual context, has changed as well. So I think World War I indeed is what historians might call a watershed, not only in world Jewish history, in world history, but in Jewish history as well. I suppose at some point it would be possible to compare the impact of World War I to World War II on the Jewish community to try and gauge exactly how profound those changes really were. So I hope this one works, and I'll be taping the next one rather soon. So do your best to listen. I know everybody is very busy, and I apologize for the endless technological issues, and eventually they will be worked out. Take care. Bye-bye.